Hello, and thank you for joining the Champion Within podcast, your premier go-to spot for unlocking your winning mindset. Whether you're an athlete looking to elevate your game to the next level, a coach leading the charge, an enthusiastic parent cheering from the sidelines, or an educator molding young minds, the Champion Within podcast episodes are packed with value, sharing the tools and strategies to unlock your potential and rise to new heights. Hosted by mentor, coach, and mindset leader Kate McCauley. Let's sit back and enjoy today's episode while discovering your champion within. And now, here's Kate.
Hey, champions. Thank you for joining me again on the Champion Within podcast. I'm excited to bring you today's guest. We have a lot of things that are in common and some things that are very different. I know that I'm going to learn, you're going to learn, and I have a feeling this is going to be a great conversation, probably one that you want to take some notes on. Today, my guest is Summer Montabone. She is a former high school teacher. She ran an after-school detention and discipline committee. Retired pro athlete, trauma survivor, a mom of 2 daughters in sports. She is also a highly awarded professional, leveraging her experience in health and fitness, sports performance, and business ownership to empower women and girls to achieve their personal best. Summer is also the creator of the Dream Big, Be Fearless mindset workbook. Yes. I can't wait to talk about all these things. She also is the author of The Softball Mindset. I've had a couple softball athletes on. I get to work with some softball teams. I know that they are all leaning in to steal the wisdom you drop. How are you today, Summer?
I'm good. How are you? It's, life is chaos though, right? You got to embrace the chaos.
I would agree. My kids are home on spring break this week to add to the chaos. So, right. I like to just ride the wave of that chaos and see where we land. You and I have some similarities. I'm going to first go to your education journey. I too was a teacher for 20 years. Tell me a little bit about who you were as an educator. You're still an educator. Let me just throw that in there. But in the actual classroom, yes. What was that like for you and what were you doing beyond that detention? I do want to hear about that, but what were you doing in the actual classroom?
Yes. Thank you. Yes. I'm still a teacher, just teaching in a different setting. Right. Mm-hmm. And so as a teacher, I got my degree in health and physical education. And as a first year teacher, I recognized there wasn't a lot of clear expectations for the kids or a lot of structure. And so I became a part of this discipline committee as a young teacher, because I always had a place in my heart too for the kids that felt like they were already labeled the bad kids, right? And so I wanted to find ways to connect with them. And one of the things I saw is like, well, there's not even clear expectations for these kids to understand. So I helped rewrite the school handbook, and I got some funding to get what they called an agenda that the kids then had to keep with them. The rules were clear, right? Like the school rules, and it also had a place for them to keep track of their homework assignments, right? So teaching those life skills. And again, this was over 25 years ago, which I know this might not seem as crazy now, but back then they're like, oh, and even like hall passes were an issue. I said, well, if they have this agenda, you can record every time they need. So it was a tool to solve a problem. I ran the after school detention, the discipline committee, and tried to connect with the kids that maybe felt that other people gave up on them. And I think that's really attributed to what's made me a great coach, is my teaching background and how I was mentored in college by my college professors, because they really held us to a high level as physical education teachers, because they did not want us labeled as that dumb gym teacher, to be quite honest. Anyway, that's kind of where I got started in teaching and part of my experience.
Did we teach together? I feel like we did so many things. I too was a health and phys ed teacher, and we used agenda books. Some were better at it than others. And when I say some, I'm talking about some teachers that would give some pushback, and, they were veteran teachers and weren't ready for some change. But right. Once they realized that system worked, most people leaned in. When you we're talking about the kids who are labeled the bad kids. I don't know if you saw me nodding my head, and those who are listening to the audio version, you can just know that I was yesing the whole time, because those kids are really my people in all spaces. You're so right. If we were able to see those students in a different perspective and let them see themselves from that lens, it's life-changing. I am just curious, we're not going to stay around this topic too much, but when you did start this committee, were there parents or educators who were like, I don't think so, this isn't how we've done things? And what did you do to help those people see the new path?
So parents were not involved in this committee. I was at a school that I would describe as a campus. There were over 2,400 students. And even over 25 years ago, we had a resource officer. There was a police officer. And we even had some of those same problems that we are now seeing in the media were occurring 25 years ago. So it was more as a new teacher. And I feel like we had this mentorship program, and just me being me, I'm always about communication. So I brought some of these ideas, and we had a great principal that allowed me, to put this framework together, put this structure together, get a couple other teachers that then formed the discipline committee to give input. So there was structure, because a lot of times these labeled bad kids are lacking structure in their life, right? They're lacking discipline. They're lacking someone to hold themselves accountable. And I see that today, that we want these kids to behave a certain way, yet adults aren't displaying or modeling that behavior. And then they're not teaching them how they should do things, right? So that's how I saw it. Again, just had a group of teachers that wanted this, and then the guy that ran the after school detention, because I also said, okay, if this is after school detention, there previously weren't any rules. Kids could come in and sleep. Well, I changed that no, you came and you did homework. If you're going to be here, you're going to write, you're going to read, you're going to do something. You're not allowed to sleep in after school detention. So, because it wasn't really a punishment either for some kids.
Right.
So again, it's just all about structure, and it was about getting, just a group of teachers together to get on board. And like you said, it's hard if you have adults that aren't going to follow through. And hey, I'll be the first to say it. Like you said, I witnessed a lot of teachers that, I'm sorry, I'm not sure why you got into teaching, right? Were you really about the kids? Did you want to put in the extra effort? That type of thing. I don't know. I want to be a part of the solution. So, creating a better.
I wish you were sitting next to me at faculty meetings, because quite literally, those are the words I used to use. I could sit here and bitch and complain about all of the things, or we could problem solve. How are we going to help these kids get to the next level? And you know what? If you're a teacher who's mumbling in the back of the room saying, I don't want to do that, this is too much work for me, go do something else. I just don't have any time for it as a mom, as a teacher, as a coach. It would just drive me insane. And ironically, those classrooms, in my opinion, were struggling the most. You need this more than I do as the health and phys ed teacher. I love everything you're saying there. You said something about structure multiple times, which is 100% true. I think it's important for those who don't understand this. If you are lacking structure, whether you are a first grader, middle schooler, high schooler, an adult, your nervous system cannot handle that. We need structure, or we are going to constantly be in this state of anxiety where we're thinking, when is the next bomb going to drop? And in some cases, I too was in a school that had a resource officer, multiple security people, and it was commonplace for it to get to the next level because of a fight or a situation that happened sometimes outside of the community that spilled into our front doors, the main hallway, everyone's classrooms. So can you imagine people who are listening right now trying to learn in that type of environment without structure? I mean, come on, this is just common sense. But so many people, in my experience again, are afraid because they don't want other people to get their feelings hurt, or this is the way we've always done it. Clearly, it's not working. So thank you, Summer. We're not going to stay there forever because I do really want to talk about the work you're doing now. But thank you for being that voice. And I hope that some of those things you left in the classroom, I'm not sure if you're still connected in any way, that they're still doing those things.
Right.
So,
Follow through, right? That's the big thing. We can institute all these rules, right? All these structures, but then at the end of the day, if nobody facilitates and follows through, that's a whole nother issue, right?
Oh, that's a podcast in itself. It really is. It takes a leader. You mentioned a principal who supported this initiative. If you do not have leadership that is going to back this and truly back it, not just nod their head, yes, it sounds like a great idea, truly back it with the consequences, and the praise too, not just, make sure that they don't talk and that kind of thing, or sleep and detention. It's important because leadership can make or break a building. Unfortunately, that's part of the reason why I left. All right. Well, I'll get fired up on this summer. I really do, but I don't want to stay here forever. I want to move to what you're doing now. Tell my listeners, what is it that you get to do with the people you work with now?
So today, fast forward, I guess I should say a year ago, I sold my brick and mortar fitness business of 20 years. That's one way I guess I shifted or pivoted my teaching career. I decided to sell that brick and mortar business so that I could be more present with my kids, because right now they're in 5th and 7th grade. I want to be more involved in their sports and then solve new problems. I saw that my talents needed to be used in a different capacity. And the work that I had been doing with women to help them become fearless decision makers and CEOs of their own life, the more and more I got into my kids' sports, I have been like, wow, like we are creating doubt and baggage that these girls are going to carry into womanhood.
And say it a little louder for the people in the back. My goodness. And what a place that can do the opposite. So what do you do for these people specifically?
So I started writing mindset workbooks. Again, kind of my teaching back, all these different things, leadership, running a business, and again, truly being a CEO. And then of course, a mom, a trauma survivor, like all these things that are in my back pocket. And I had a coach and mentor that's like, Summer, I just really see you writing a workbook. And so once I had the space to create a workbook, because I honestly needed to sell that brick and mortar to have the creativity, have the space to do it, I originally set out to do one for women, but I actually started with the softball mindset. Some of my daughter's coaches planted a seed and I kind of ran with it, started with a short version. It's now a 100-page version. And the softball mindset workbook spends several weeks on and off as an Amazon bestseller. That's just how it works on Amazon.
Incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, it exceeded my expectations. And so it makes me feel good personally. I got to share my talents in a workbook that a lot of other people, get. And I say I created it for her. I created it for the girls, but I really created it for the parents and the coaches so that they had a tool and they had a framework that they can help their child. Because what I'm seeing across the board, both physically and mentally, is we have adults who are not trained as coaches or educators, and they have unrealistic expectations that are not mentally, emotionally, physically, developmentally appropriate for these kids. And so we're setting them up for failure now, and we're setting them up for failure in the future. And I don't want kids to experience some of the things I experienced and or my adult female coaching clients, that some of the stuff comes up and they recognize that coach they had, that Susie had playing soccer, the way that coach treated her has stayed in her subconscious and is now affecting her as a wife, a mom, and a leader in the workplace. So that mindset workbook is kind of my core thing right now.
Thank you for creating that. It sounds amazing. I want to pull apart so many things that you said there. Let's touch on the piece where you said there's coaches who are and teachers who are not trained. This is really important. And because I have 3 children, my husband and I are involved in a lot of the sports organizations, health and phys ed. They're like, you can do this, you can coach, especially when they were little. And I love doing that. We still help out, even though they have aged out of some of these things. My husband's better than I'm going to be honest with some of them. He's still on the boards of lots of things. I am watching it happen. My oldest is now a ref for basketball, for example. Occasionally, I will pop into a game. It's a local thing that he does. And some of my younger nieces play in the level that he was reffing. So I'm like, this is perfect. I'm going to go watch our game. And then I can kind of sit on the side and see my son in action. He's perfect at this for many reasons. He's an athlete himself. But the parents and the coaches there, it's all I can do to stay quiet sometimes. And I'm not there to judge or critique anyone, but it is glaringly obvious that they are not trained.
Mm-hmm.
And to be quite honest, I think that we're doing a disservice because we are searching for coaches. Let me just say that. Thank you for volunteering, the people who are those coaches, because it's mostly volunteer situation. I will say at the middle school and high school and even college level, when I've worked with some of those coaches, they're just not trained. And we have to give this training to them.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot assume that just because your mom threw around a softball and shot some foul shots when she was in middle school and high school, that she is equipped with all of the tools to guide your athletes. We appreciate her, but let's train her. So in that workbook, what would you say is something that really stands out for the coaches? Maybe you've had some feedback, or maybe the parents told you that someone who's listening right now could just steal a little tip.
So I've put out 4 workbooks, and every time I put them for different sports. So I have basketball, I have volleyball, soccer, and softball. And I always get couple parents and a couple coaches to review the workbooks ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple things that have really stood out from coaches is that they're like, wow, I've been coaching for 20, 30 years. These are also coaches that are off. A couple of them have been teachers, and they're like, I just learned an awful lot. This really helped me look at things from a different perspective and change my attitude as a coach. And they're like, wow, so now I'm excited how this is going to shift perspective. One woman in particular, she's like, I've been coaching for over 30 years. And she said, I was having some challenges with my middle school players. And it helped her recognize that her bad attitude towards she was frustrated. They were frustrated. It wasn't helping. And so the workbook gave her tools to then use. And she's like, all right, now I can look at things differently and I can help those kids better. I'm more equipped now. And this is, again, someone who has taught and coached for over 30 years.
Right.
And you and I, we have physical education background. So we were taught and trained as teachers and educators. And as a fitness business owner, I loved hiring teachers and molding them in to be specific coaches. Okay. Because you understand different things there. And what I see, though, is you might have great athletes or people that just love the sport that become coaches, that they just don't have the tools on communication, or going back to what we said about structure. I mean, practices that there's not like a certain beginning, you know what I mean? Like there's not a format or a structure. And the same then when it comes with how the human body works, how the human brain works. There's a lot of missing pieces, and that you've got, let's say you have a team of 12. We have 12 different puzzle pieces, and every single person has different needs. You can't treat them all to come together to complete your puzzle. And unfortunately, we have a lot of adults who only know how to communicate one way. And I feel like a lot of teachers, the good teachers that were trained, understand audio learners, verbal learners, visual learners, hands-on learn, right? And all these different ways to connect. And that's one of the biggest things I see is missing. I'm right there with you. Bless these coaches that volunteer and put in their time. But this is such a vulnerable developmental time for these kids, and we've got to do better.
I would agree. And it's really admirable that coaches are buying the books, that moms, dads, that they're purchasing this to continue that learning. As an educator myself, even though I'm not in the physical classroom anymore, I will always be learning and growing. And you had just mentioned to be able to differentiate to the different types of learners. When you are a coach, you are a teacher of that sport. You might be an expert in basketball skills, softball skills, volleyball skills, but you are not an expert in these other areas. If you haven't had training at all, You need to have it if you want your team to win. I often say WIN stands for what is needed. And we have to realize as coaches that we could be great, a great athlete. I was so successful. I actually don't care when I work with a team. I mean, it's all good and great. I'm like, yay, I'll clap for you if you need claps. But when you're listing off, these are my stats in college, and this is what I did to, how many lacrosse balls I scooped up, all these different things. Who cares?
Right.
I really don't care about that. I could figure out how to teach the lacrosse kids, even if I wasn't a lacrosse player. You have to connect with each kid. You have to build a rapport. And I loved that puzzle piece example you said. There's all these different puzzles. And think about it, people who are listening. If you're making a puzzle, they all look slightly different. You have to figure out what fits where. And some days you're going to be, I can't find this piece of puzzle. It's a hot mess. Like, where's this kid?
Right.
You have to be aware of those things. I was looking at some of the stuff that you put on the form, and I stalked your social media. I'm not going to lie. Lots of things I love. Hey, listeners, are you ready to unleash your inner champion? Let's talk about something close to my heart. My merch t-shirts, my Champion Within assemblies, and the Village Mentality. When you grab one of these t-shirts, you're not just rocking some cool gear, you're making a real difference. Every single purchase helps fund powerful school and community programs that lift kids up, builds confidence, sparks connection, and we're straight up creating champions. My goal, when I roll in to give a keynote, I want to go into a local school in that area and bring the Champion Within school assembly to life. So when you wear one of these shirts, you're part of something way bigger than a transaction. You're helping change lives. Thank you for being in this with me. From the bottom of my heart, much love and gratitude. After the show, head down to the show notes, click on that link, and go grab your t-shirt. Now let's get back to the podcast chat. You were talking about moving forward fearlessly. What does that look like in everyday life for an athlete, for a coach, just people?
So I think first and foremost, it's accepting and acknowledging you are going to face adversity. You're going to. The path in anywhere is not linear. And so for me, I adapted the word fearless after experiencing a few different things and kind of my postpartum journey. I had to kind of rebuild myself after becoming a mom.
Do you mind sharing just a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm an open book. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. My mom even had, twins. My mom had passed away 6 years before I became a mom. And when I became a mom, I was overcome with such severe postpartum depression, anxiety. I couldn't rest, like it was just a mess. I didn't have support. And I actually ended up spending a week in the psychiatric unit when my daughter was 5 weeks old. And my chant to myself was, why didn't anybody tell me I could ever feel this way? And I have to be a voice for women who are suffering in silence. And so I took my pain as part of a platform and my purpose. And so fearless was the word that I adapted because I was like, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. And I need to share that because I don't know about you, but I was raised in a household where we do not talk about anything and, keeping things emotionally vulnerable, and for me, I'm like, we have to share experiences to let people know they're not alone. Because as we just talked about, we're individuals, not everybody's the same. So that's how I adapted the word fearless. And so just being fearless then is, all right, embrace the fear and how can we move forward? Going back to that problem solving again. So what solutions are we going to look for, or, to move forward? And so it's not that you're never going to face fear
right.
or truly be fearless. Okay. But how are you going to move forward with the fear? And so like in the workbook, I have a whole fork in the road thinking, reframe thinking. So it's a gentle way for athletes in their own language I give situations and then I'm like, how do you handle it? So that they're preparing ahead of time to how to handle it. And again, like that work and the work I do with women, it really all goes together. It's just speaking a language and at a level that is appropriate for them.
Right.
Yeah.
So first, let me just send you so much love for that situation. And thank you for being open, that you're an open book, as you said, because if we don't talk about those things, I always say, is it okay if you want to share? I don't want to push someone if they don't want to, but when we are open and able to speak about it, it gives other people the permission slip to
Yes.
say, nobody told me either. And holy shit, I'm feeling that. I need to figure this out because I guess I don't have to feel this way. Some people think, well, this is just the way it's going to be. And, I was very fortunate that my mom was an educator and I did talk about a lot of things. Sometimes I had 3 brothers. I was the oldest in 3 brothers. And sometimes they're probably like, can we stop talking about all the things? And I do it as a mom too. And my kids roll their eyes. But you think about it in that I want them to hear this because they're going to experience life. I love that you said, it's not that we're going to erase fear, that it's not going to happen. There's going to be moments that pop up. When that happens, what do you tell someone as the first step so they don't sit in it? You mentioned about navigating through the fear to become that fearless, moving forward mindset. Is there a baby step or a first step you would tell someone to use?
Well, the first thing is just acknowledge it. Like, acknowledge it. I'm big on self-awareness in general. And so it's like, if we're in denial that this is fearful for us, right? Like, we have to acknowledge it first and foremost. And then, everybody's going to be a little different as to what tools they need to use to work through it. Now, I'm big on asking questions. And that's one thing in coaching. I say talk less, ask more. It's not about having the right answers. It's about asking the right questions. And so whether someone then secondly is, someone else can maybe ask them questions and they verbally talk through it, or they get pen to paper. I'm so big on pen to paper. And that's why I think the workbook is so unique and needed for these kids to process. So do we process that way? Do we need to process physically? Do we need to go work off that energy, right, through sports? And so it's finding those like coping mechanisms, right? Those tools, once you acknowledge what it is, and then what are some solutions? Let's look at multiple perspectives.
Right. What a wonderful suggestion. One, just simply acknowledge it. So many people say, we're just going to push that down. We're not going to pretend like this is, don't even think about it. No, you can't do that because it gets stuck in your body. And then that's why they're not taking the shot. That's why they're not swinging the bat. You're telling them to push this down and not move through it. It will quite literally get stuck in their body. The second part, you really gave 2 suggestions there, that there's so many tools. We have to train people, the coaches, the parents, the kids, how to use these tools. And you are a true educator when you said, some people aren't going to like these things. This tool works for this person. That tool works for that person. We're all unique. Thank goodness their life would be boring. And please rewind that and listen. Just because Summer teaches you something, I teach you something, someone else teaches you something, it is not the gold standard. There's so many tools that you might like something better, but you have to be open and get uncomfortable and try it, because there is a piece where someone will say, well, I just don't like visualization, or I'm not going to do breath work or whatever. I'm not going to get my pen out and write in the workbook because I don't like it. You're not going to like any of these things the first time you do it because you're in a state of complete shutdown in your nervous system, as we were saying earlier. Give it a little bit of time. The reason why we say this is a practice, just like practicing softball, practicing basketball. You often hear people say, I practice meditation, I practice reflecting, because it takes more than one time. It's not magic beans. We have to be aware of that. And the last thing I want to say before I move to something different with you, you mentioned actually taking the pen to paper. Because my son has a uniquely beautiful brain, the youngest guy, I know a lot about the brain, more than I care to admit some days, but I was thrown into that and I'm, forging through. But when you can do that, and people who are not watching, my hand is moving as if I'm writing something down here. So if you're on YouTube and you see this, you know what I'm saying. But the Audible listeners, when we are writing things down, it actually sends messages to our brain differently than when we speak it. So if you read it out loud, you read it to yourself. So many different valuable tools there to be able to get that pen to paper that can reinforce and quite literally rewire your brain. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're not spell checking, So, all right. Well, I want to move on to, you talked a little bit about teacher skills. You used it when you were in that brick and mortar fitness business. I hear you saying it now. What are some of the skills that transferred for you that maybe, I'm going to admit, when I left teaching, I didn't own it right away. And now I realize that's because I'm a teacher. So is there something like that for you that either someone else has acknowledged or you realize, well, it's because I'm a teacher?
So I would definitely say, like in the coaching space, both fitness and sports, being detail oriented and the ability to break things down into easily digestible nuggets. That I feel like is a skill that a lot of good trained teachers have been through. But I've also learned that maybe part of my detail oriented is my neurodivergent brain too.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Right. And so, like we said, seeing that everybody needs to be communicated with differently. Okay. And so I really think that's the biggest thing I took from teaching, again, was the clear expectations. Like if they don't know what they're supposed to do, you cannot expect them to. So if that meant I had to explain it by verbally speaking it, by writing it, by giving you a video, by doing it with like so many different ways. And I think we're failing in the classroom on that as well. We're definitely failing on in sports. So I definitely think that's a tool, right, that we can do, looking at those different learning styles. So I think as a teacher, that came with me a lot. And then, like I said, just the structure, the holding accountable, like, okay, so if you're my fitness client, for example, one of the first easy things is, can we drink water and bring your water bottle? Because like, if we can't get past that, how are we going to build on to anything else? Right. And so I'll explain fitness, sports, anything like math classes. We have to start with addition and subtraction, move on to multiplication and division. So we have too many people in fitness and in sports jumping to calculus, wondering why they're frustrated, right? Or, they're not getting it. And then like in the athletic world, you have kids moving on to sports that now, because they didn't have a strong foundation, it's catching up with them later. And you just skip steps. So I think teachers are good a lot of times at systems and process, which as a business owner, you have to have systems and process. So I think that goes along, and that's, where it's helpful as a coach.
I love it. And what a great example. You need to have a foundation. That's such a great example. We can't jump right to calculus. I mean, come on, people. Get it together. We can't do that. But so many people think that we want to do that because look at me, look how great we are. We're leveling up. But okay, that's not going to work if you don't have the foundation. It's all good and great to post that on Instagram or Facebook. Look at us. We did this, that, and the other thing. But in the background, your kid's like having a complete nervous system breakdown. And of course, you're not showing that on the highlight reel. But and it's not sustainable if you don't have that foundation. So many teachers have asked me, and I don't want teachers to all run and leave. Two of my children, actually, the freshman in college, and then I have a junior in high school. Both of them are going for education, one health and phys ed, one for early education. Initially, they were a little leery of it because I left the classroom. I had to remind them that there's reasons to stay, reasons to leave, and, lean into what is best for you. So many teachers have said to me, I don't even know how you do this. I said, you just aren't owning those skills that transfer over. And I'm not saying leave the classroom or anything like that, but if you're considering it, the first thing to look at is that long list of skills. I mean, the things that you and I did, Summer, in those classrooms and the hallways, it sounds like we were in a very similar environment. I mean, I go to places now as a speaker and I'm like, oh, the microphone's not working. That's it. That's the only problem here today. No one's telling me to F off or, doing crazy stuff in the locker room. I'm good. We got this. And people are in the corporate space are frazzled and we can't, well, we're so embarrassed. I'm like, really, we got this. And it all goes back to being a teacher. We just didn't, or I know personally, I didn't own it at first. And I just want those teachers to know, whether you're in the classroom or doing something different now, you have a long list, that skill set. So own it.
Well, it's
You know,
okay.
Summer, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if it's okay with you, I want to take that as a learning point, as a reframe point, because you just said for some people, they're like, well, I've been doing this for 15, 20 years. And I feel as a society, a lot of us have been conditioned, you have to stay in the same job forever. And it's okay for you to outgrow that job. It's okay for you to recognize that your skill set can be used in a different way, right? To solve new problems. And that was your foundation to be able to move on and make a bigger impact. So I think a lot of women in particular need to reframe that and not feel obligated to either their degree or their career. And that's another way they can move forward fearlessly, right? And use those skills in another way.
You know, thank you. Were you brought to me today to coach me a little bit? But if I had you a year ago, I left in 2021.
Gotcha.
So I tell people it was a long beginning, and this is where I am now. People have actually said to me, I guess that wasn't your purpose, which pissed me off because I was really good, did a lot of things, and I love that school community. And I responded with, no, that was my purpose. And now my purpose is here. But I got to tell you, Summer, I'm going to steal what you just said to me, that this was my foundation to get me to where I am now, because I am still an educator. I've just expanded the way that I educate. And I love that foundation piece. So people who are, spitting out fire, sometimes get ready. I got a couple lines to say to you now.
Yes.
So what a great example. And others who are listening, whether you're a teacher or not, you're just thinking, maybe I want to change, shift lanes in some way. It's like Summer just said, it's okay to do that. That's really what kept me there as long as I was there. I actually had a gun pointed at me in the parking lot after a back to school conference night. And I stayed for 6 more years, and everyone had said to me, why wouldn't you just leave? I didn't really think I was going to leave. I thought I was going to retire as a teacher. And, I had 3 little kids at home at that point, but it was because I was so comfortable and thought I could not shift. And once I realized that, it was actually the pandemic finally pushed me in. I'm grateful for the pandemic, oddly.
But lessons learned there.
100%. So thank you for that foundation piece. It's really powerful for me and hopefully those who are listening. I'm going to take us to a different place. I saw a couple videos which were really awesome on your Instagram. If your kid wants to have a catch, get out there and do it. You drop everything. And I also loved how you were talking about going back to the 90s. I'm a 90s girl. So I thought that was awesome. But I really loved when you said, one of your posts, I believe it was on Instagram, about being a multi-sport athlete. I have my opinions on this, and I would love to hear what you think about this.
Absolutely. So just to give a tiny bit of background, we already know the phys ed, ran track in college, became a pro athlete in fitness, certified strength and conditioning specialist, and I have coached ages 2 through elite athlete, including MLB. So wide variety of perspective. And as a sports performance specialist and an athlete myself on my own journey, yes, you should be a multi-sport athlete. We are trying to specialize kids too early, but the problem in today's society is you're turning these sports into year-round sports under regimens that even pro athletes don't. I tell people all the time, I did not train 7 days a week.
Yeah, what was your sport when you were growing up that you were?
So when I was growing up, I did play softball, I twirled baton, I ran track, I played volleyball. I kind of tried it all. There wasn't travel sports back in my day.
Right.
And I ran track in college, and then I got into the fitness piece because there was that that strength component. It was another way for me to challenge myself after college, to continue challenging myself from a sports performance aspect. Like there's periodization, right? You do things, and just like we talked about math classes. And again, we have a lot of coaches in the youth area and even high school that do not understand this. And then you have college coaches that are even going, well, you burned this kid out. Well, you didn't develop them as an athlete. You tried to develop them as a player. And now
Right.
I've got a kid who runs like a baby giraffe to first base. Okay.
So true. So true.
So just to share with you with my own children, we did, gymnastics. I think gymnastics is one of the best, right? For that physical education piece, learning about your body awareness. I started teaching my kids running form, like how to run, how to move from an early time. Well, they have pretty much excelled in any sport they pick up and they try. So I've got my 13-year-old is on a travel softball team, travel volleyball team, and she's running track. And she excels in all of them athletically. As far as learning the games, she's got a lot to learn. But we're also not overtraining. Luckily, she has coaches that it's okay that volleyball's 2 days a week, softball's we're not stacking up 4 hours of practice.
Thank goodness for those coaches.
Right?
We need more of those.
Right? And like you talked about earlier, I saw a guy reference athletes or kids should be looked at as a slow cooker. You referenced earlier, right? About, we need to hit this skill now. So in some ways, under today's standards in society of youth sports, I'm holding my kids back. We're not doing a ton of private lessons.
Okay.
We're not, you know what I mean? Like this craziness, but the sports performance aspect is important too. Like I want my kids, learning how to move their body, doing body weight strength training, band training. And this is a whole nother thing because we have kids in sports that aren't doing that are getting injured because sometimes sports performance isn't actually about improving the performance. It's about keeping you healthy to counteract all the repetitive movements you're doing.
Again, going back to the trained person here.
Well,
I'm nodding my head again for those who are listening to. I think this is just such an important thing because honestly, I think it's the parents want to say, look at my kid, look what they're doing. And listen, there are the rare occasion, the Bryce Harpers outside of Philly here. Like there's people who are different. Okay. I get it. I'm going to get some messages about this. Like, well, blah, blah, blah. This is why I do it. And okay. I love you still, but you really need to think about what's happening there. Your kid is throwing that many pitches and they're not doing anything else. They're, like you said, how perfect, running like a baby giraffe down the first base to first base. I mean, you have to let your kid experience all these different things for so many reasons. One, it's their journey, not yours.
Yeah.
And we sign them up when they're young, right?
Yes.
So in most cases, I bet if we go and talk to these kids, they're not like, I need to be on 25 teams for this. Right. Listen, there is a kid, my son loved basketball and he would have played on every single team. And we did let him play like summer league and different things, but it was fun, and he also played lacrosse. He tried baseball. All of my kids, my youngest was like, I don't want any parts of any of this, but all three of them tried all of the things. And, I often joke with people, my husband loves baseball and my kids just didn't choose softball or baseball. They tried it and he was just like, I think secretly a little sad, but it was like, it's cool. It's their journey, And some people were like, well, make them play another couple years. They'll love it. I'm like, oh, so we're going to force them to love the game. Like, no, hard no, because sports are so much more. People are trying to develop these elite children for what?
Right.
So, I mean, I loved seeing that multi-sport athlete piece. And when I've interviewed college coaches and when I've been in rooms with college coaches to run workshops, I have never met one that says, I really think we should start specializing these kids at age 7, even in high school, they're saying, I like that multi-sport athlete.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that it's just really a valuable piece, but you're right that other people often say, oh, you're not getting the extra training or you're not doing this. And that's something that I think we have to let go of the shoulds and supposed tos. Listen to Summer, listen to these people who are actually trained to tell you this. I would love to know if there's a tip that you would give someone, if you could say, or maybe a statement, this is the one thing that I wish all of you would turn the volume up on. What is it that you would give to the sports world?
Wow, that's a good one there. Looking at yourself as a parent and a coach, look at yourself. Are you doing the personal growth work that you expect of your children and your athletes? And I honestly think that's one of the biggest things there. So look at yourself. Are you asking the right questions? I guess
Great.
that's kind of what it would be. We have to take personal accountability, personal responsibility. We got to lead ourselves first,
Right?
Lead anyone else.
An inside out job, what I often say, inside out. And how can you really, how dare you, if you're a coach, say, you do this, but it's not for me? I mean, come on. You want them to speak a certain way and show up a certain way, follow your plan, but you're late, or you don't think about your words before you spit them out, but you expect them to. Stop it. Just stop it. I'm going to get fired up again, like the school thing here.
I think we could hit on a lot of different things, right? And so just like to summarize what you said too, is like, are your actions in alignment with your expectations or even your words? Like we see organizations that put out these core values, but then it's like, hello, disconnect, right? And so
woman, I could tell some stories there. That's so valuable. I just had something pop into my brain because let me tell you, I've screwed up. I'll probably do it again this week. And with my own kids, with my business, all kinds of things. And when we do something like that, own it. If you have those core values or you make a mistake, you want to be a better communicator and you expect them to, and you don't do it.
Yes.
It is really valuable to say, I screwed up. I'm sorry. This is what I'm going to do moving forward. What you do next matters most.
And I think just, you mentioned business, sports, the word leadership. There are a lot of people who do not understand what that means. There are a lot of people that do not understand how to organize and lead. And I see it with my corporate female clients as well, that we're having to navigate things because the leadership is so poor in their companies, right? And then we see this same thing in sports. So it comes down to leadership. And if we can grow more leaders, and then again, even like with the workbooks, that's why I'll say it's like confidence, resilience, and personal leadership. Teaching that 10-year-old, because that's kind of my sweet spot, the 10 to 12-year-old, to start, like you said, okay, I made a mistake. Now let me figure out how I move forward. Problem solve, like you said, take the ownership. Yeah. So, wow.
What a difference it makes when you learn that at 10 to 12. You are a different woman when you are 15, 20. You are a leader in a corporate space. You're a coach, whatever, because you're building a foundation. You're doing the addition, just like you were saying earlier. Can you tell people where they can find those workbooks if they want to purchase them? I'm sure people are thinking, I need to get my hands on this.
Sure, absolutely. So my name's Summer Montabone. If you search it online, my website has a tab for workbooks, and I have my 5 workbooks. You can get them as a digital download, and then they're also available as paperbacks on Amazon. And so searching my name or even searching Dream Big, Be Fearless, that's where you can find the paperback workbooks on Amazon. I am working on putting together some workshops and other things because I really want to educate and empower the coaches. That's why typically I don't work with a lot of the athletes themselves. I feel my best use is let's empower more coaches to become better leaders to help more people. So Summer Montabone, that's just the best way to find me on social and my website. Yeah.
And I'll definitely drop the links in the show notes for everyone who's listening. So you can just go click on those, go click on it, check it out, grab it for yourself. Or if you're an athletic director, I have a lot of different people listen to the podcast. What a great thing to give to your coaching staff. And you should run those workshops because it's much needed. I think that it really would be of great value. I'm glad you're creating something. As you said, when you teach the coaches, it's so that trickle down ripple effects into really every part of their life, not just their athletes. Yes. I'm excited for you. And I'm excited for the people who get to experience that. So thank you. Well, I would keep you here forever because we could talk about a lot of things, and maybe we will have to do some other podcasts just on 1 or 2 specific topics because my brain is going all over the place. Like, oh, she probably experienced this, that, and the other thing. Well, I'm going to go to the last question. If you were the main character, the movie's called The Champion Within, the screen goes to black, what is everyone in the audience screaming for you to do next? They're on social media, hashtagging. what do they want you to do next?
Oh my goodness. These are some deep questions I'm not prepared for. I don't know. I think for me, it's just continuing stepping out there, like continuing sharing and speaking up for maybe the people that aren't speaking. I feel like that's kind of been my purpose is, again, as I said, for women, but I also feel for the athletes, say the things that other people are afraid to say, or they're keeping or in their head, like speak the unspoken. So I guess I don't know how to describe that, but I think that's
perfect.
Looking for from me.
Hashtag speak the unspoken, hashtag keep going. I feel like there's so many things that they would be posting and hoping that happens when that screen left them on the cliffhanger. Well, Summer, thank you so much. I really had a great time talking with you. I was reflecting on my own journey, and I learned a lot too while we were chatting. And thank you for the work that you do in the world. It is much appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity, and it's a privilege to have the conversation with you.
You are very welcome. And for all my champions who are listening, I hope you take this, put it into your life uniquely, because as we have said multiple times, it is much needed to really help that athlete, your child, even you, become that whole best version of yourself. Thank you for hanging out with us today, and go crush the rest of your week.
Thank you for hanging out with Kate today. And whether you're going to coach, teach, cheer from the sidelines, or hitting the field yourself, remember, mindset is everything. Don't forget to follow the show for the latest episodes, as we all need a little extra motivation, humor, and sanity in our busy lives. Now, go and unleash your champion within you, one step at a time. We're always rooting for you.